following is an extract that was taken from the Leslie Flint Trust, where a man by the name of Private Alf Pritchett of the 225th Machine Gun Corps Infantry was killed during World War I. The medium was Leslie Flint, and the spirit of Alf Pritchett was interviewed by George Woods and Betty Greene. Alf Pritchett describes what it was like when he lost his life as a soldier in the First World War, and the initial question was asked by Betty Greene, who asked Alf Pritchett what his reactions were when he found himself on the other side. Pritchett: One moment I was alive, and I always remember it so well. We've been under heavy bombardment practically all day, and I thought to myself at the time, if we come through this lot, we'll be lucky, And then when we were early morning, we were given the command to go over the top. Well, I thought, this is it, boy. Oh well, if I come out of this lot, I'll be bloody lucky. Anyway, I went. I must admit that it took all I'd got to really get myself over the top. Anyway, I don't like even going into it, except in that all I know is that I was running forward, and I still kept running forward. And the funny part about it, that some of the Germans were coming towards me, and they rushed past me as if they didn't see me. I thought, well, that's a funny how'd you do. All I remember was feeling in a pretty bad state, sweating and, crying out loud, this is it, But instead of them attacking me or in any way, sort of taking any interest in me, they were rushing past me. I thought, well, good Lord, I can't make this out at all. And it took me quite a while to sort of realise what had happened. In fact, it was some time, I think, before I realised what had happened. I went on, and all I can remember is running, and I thought, well, if they're not going to see me, I'm certainly not going to bother about them. I'm going to try and get into a little cubbyhole somewhere and get out of it. And all I remember is getting into a hole in the ground that had been created by a bomb, I expect, at some time. Anyway, all I know is that I got into this hole and just crouched down and thought, well, I'll wait till this shindig's over and hope for the best. Might get taken prisoner. Who knows? I don't. And I was lying there thinking to myself, well, it's a funny how'd you do. They didn't see me. They must have seen me, yet they went right past me. And I started to think about it, and I thought, well, I don't know. I'm lucky. And I don't know how long I must have been there. Anyway, I must have fallen asleep or something, because the next thing I know was that, at the time I remember seeing a bright light in front of me. It was just as if I woke up and there was a very bright light. And I couldn't make this out at all, because it was the sort of light I'd never seen before. It was just as if the whole place was illuminated, and it was so dazzling that for a moment I could sort of hardly look at it. I had to keep sort of closing my eyes and having a look. And I thought, well, I don't know, some sort of trick of the light or something. I got a little windy, I didn't know what to think. Then all of a sudden it was just as if I saw an outline, a shape or figure appear. And I kept looking, and I thought, well, I don't know. I wasn't sure whether it was human or what it was. It was the outline of a human being, and it was full of luminosity, and gradually it seemed to take shape. And I was in an absolute sweat, because eventually I could see that it was an old friend of mine, who I knew had been killed some months before, named Smart. Billy Smart, we used to call him. Old Bill. And he was looking at me, and I was looking at him, and it was, I don't know how to explain this, it was as if somehow there was some sort of merging, I suppose in some way or other, of him and me. Most peculiar. I can't explain this. Anyway, all I know is that I felt myself getting up, and that struck me as odd that I should be conscious of myself getting up. In a strange sort of way, I thought, well, here's me been lying here probably all night, all day and night. I ought to be feeling stiff and awkward and uncomfortable, but I didn't. I felt as light as a feather, and I thought, well, something's gone to me head. Perhaps I got a whack, or something. I didn't know what to think about it. Anyway, I went towards him, as if I was being drawn like a magnet to him. And as I got closer, I could see that he was, I don't know, full of vitality, full of life, wonderful, sort of colour in his face. And then all of a sudden, as I got near to him, it dawned on me that he was dead. Funny thing was, when I first saw him, I didn't think of him as being dead, although I must have remembered and realised in a way he'd been killed some months before. Anyway, all I know is I was drawn to him, and he smiled at me, and I suppose I must have smiled back. Anyway, he sort of held out his hand, and I felt a bit of a daft in a way, because I know it's natural to shake hands, but there was me in a dug hole, a trench, a dugout, whatever you want to call it, crater in the earth, sort of shaking hands with someone who was dead, and it sort of put me in a cold sweat, in a kind of way, and I thought, well, what's going on here? I must be dreaming or something. Anyway, I could hear him speak, and he says, "All right, nothing to worry about, you're all right, mate, come on." And there was me putting my hand in his, just like a kid, and I thought, well, this is damn daft, this is. There's something wrong somewhere. Anyway, all I know is I got hold of his hand and suddenly felt the sort of floating sensation, and before I knew it, where I was, it was just as if I was being lifted up in the air, holding his hand too. And I thought, well, this is something, this is. It reminded me of something I saw years ago, Peter Pan or something. There was me, floating up in the air, holding his hand, and I thought, crying out loud, this is a funny dream, this is. There was us, sort of floating. I can't say I was doing anything else but floating, just with my feet off the ground, going gradually higher and higher, as if everything gradually was getting further and further away. And I could see in the distance, down below, the battlefield, and I could see the guns and the light and the explosions, and the war were obviously still going on. And I thought, well, I don't know, this is the most peculiar dream, this is. And then the next thing I remember was sort of gradually coming inside of what appeared to me to be a big city. It was luminous. That's the only way I can describe this. It's that it was luminous. It was as if all the buildings sort of had a glow about them. This glow, by the way, seemed to be something that seemed to be not only with him, my friend, but with everything. Even when I remember now looking back, there was a sort of haze or a glow over everything. Anyway, cut a long story short, I suddenly felt my feet touching the ground again. Most peculiar. And it felt solid. And I remember walking along what appeared to be a long avenue. And on each side of this street or avenue were beautiful trees, and between every other tree or so there was what appeared to be a sort of statue. That's the only way I can describe it. Figures. Beautiful figures they were. Sculptured sort of figures, you see. And on the sidewalk, I suppose what you'd call it, or the path or pavement, people were going about, but dressed in most peculiar sort of dress. I thought, oh dear, this is a real corker, this is, a real dream. They looked like as if they might have been Romans or Greeks or something, like you see in pictures. And a beautiful building with pillars and beautiful steps leading up, some of them had. And they were mostly flat roof, by the way. I don't remember ever seeing any roofs and gables like one associated with England, for instance. They all seemed to be what you call on the continental side, sort of beautiful flat roof houses, beautifully designed, and this sort of glow coming from them. All sorts of people there was, and I saw horses. I saw several people on horseback riding beautiful, magnificent looking horses they were. And anyway, I thought, this is quite a do, this is, And anyway, he was talking away to me. Of course, he says, of course, you know what happened to you. So I say, what's happened to me? I says, all I know is what's happened, what ain't happened. I am having a good time here. It's better than being down there, in that lot. I shall be sorry to wake up. He says, don't worry, you ain't gonna wake up. I says, what do you mean you ain't gonna wake up? Well, he says, you've had it, chum. I said, what do you mean, had it? So he says, you're dead. I said, don't be silly. How can I be dead? I'm here. I can see all what's going on around me. I can see you. But I said, I know as though you died some months ago. You got a packet. But how is it that, I don't know. I said to him, you may be dead, but I'm dreaming. Ah, he says, no you ain't. You really are dead. You got a packet in that charge. I said, oh, get away. How can I have had it? I wouldn't be here like this, would I? He says, that's just it, he says. You are here. You're dead. I said, what? "You don't mean to tell me this is heaven?" So he says, "Well, not exactly, but it's an aspect." I thought to myself, aspect? What's aspect mean? And then suddenly it dawned on me that it was a sort of part of, Anyway, to cut a long story short, we went up to this nice, very pleasant road in this beautiful city, and we came to a sort of hill. Not a very steep hill. And right in front of me, on top of this hill, I could see what looked like a beautiful building. How can I describe it? Something I'd seen in the city of London, only much more white and much more beautiful. And I thought, this is a nice looking place. What's that? So I said to him, "What's that place?" And he says, "You'll go in there," he says, "to meet some of your old friends." He said, "That's what we call a reception station." I said, "Oh, what?" He said, "It's like a kind of hospital." I said, "Well, I don't want to go to any hospital. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm all right," I said. "In any case, I can't get this at all." He said, "Don't worry. Just don't tax your brain," he says. "Too much at the moment. It'll come to you later. Just relax and enjoy yourself." I said, "Well, I'm doing that all right. It's a darn sight better than being down there. In a sense," I says, "I don't particularly want to wake up. If this is what you say true, I have to believe you, but at the same time, I can't make head or tail of it." Anyway, to cut a long story short, we got to this place, and went in, and there was all sorts of people there, all kinds. But what struck me as odd, they were dressed much the same as, many people that I'd known, and what I used to dress like myself in Civvy Street, suits and that sort of thing. And it all seemed to be very natural, and the funny thing was that the outside of this place looked like a sort of temple place or something, I suppose you'd call it, but inside it all looked very natural, most peculiar. It was not exactly like an hospital, but at the same time it had an atmosphere of peace and tranquility and all that. Private Alf Pritchett 9023 is listed as being killed on August the 16th, 1917, and is buried a mile from Ypres in the Bijitsi Lawn Cemetery in Belgium. The spirit assisting him was Private William Smart, 20394, of the 1st Machine Gun Corps Infantry, who died on February the 23rd, 1916, and is buried at Alice Memorial, Calais in France. Private Smart was killed 18 months before Private Pritchett.